It's all about the macro productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack-Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him. Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Suez hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rumble, Band.video, Vigilante.tv, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate your support. Have you rated the show yet? We hope you give us 5 stars if you think we've earned it. If you want to connect with me, macroaggressions.io is the best place to do that. You can find information about the books, the podcasts. You can get links to Activist Post and Natural Blaze. Hopefully you bookmark those sites already. We appreciate the amazing support of our sponsors that allow us to do this show. Thank you to the folks over at vanman.shop. Have you gone to Van Man yet? You got to check it out. They've got lotions, soaps, vanilla body butter, tallow and honey balm. They have tooth powder, not toothpaste, tooth powder. They've got a brand new deodorant out there that doesn't have a bunch of aluminum in it. There's all kinds of amazing things over there. Natural products. The vanilla body butter is just grass-fed beef tallow, shea butter, olive oil, honey, and vanilla oil. That's it. It's not loaded up with a bunch of chemicals or nonsense like that. So if you're interested, I'll tell you what, best thing to do, just check out their website. They've got good packaging too. You know, it matters. Products look good. They work. They're all natural. It's a small business based in San Diego. We love them, man. I got to know the guys. I really like them. I think you'll be interested in what they've got cooking over there. Go to vanman.shop. If you find something that you like, the discount code on your way out the door is macro. Also, to our folks at My Patriot Supply, they're nice enough to have built us a landing page, preparewithmacroaggressions.com. They've got storable food, they've got survival gear, they've got camping gear, and they've got it all in one place. You can just go to preparewithmacroaggressions.com. The link is down in the show notes. They'll get you sorted out in about 10 minutes. Do you have storable food? You need some, just in case. Good news is it'll last you for 25 years. If you don't have it yet, you can knock it out in a few minutes. If you're already prepared, good for you. You're ahead of the curve. Most people aren't. Maybe you're thinking of buying your family members some food just so that they've got it. Do that. Go get in there, have it sent to their address instead of yours, and a box of, a couple buckets of food will show up. They could just put it in their basement, and you tell them it's for a rainy day or it's a hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, whatever. Don't freak them out with the economic collapse. I mean, we're talking about it, but they probably don't want to hear about it. They're not ready for that level. But we know that these things are possible, and so as a result, we are prepared in advance. So the link is down in the show notes, but you can just go over there and check it out for yourself. Prepare with macroaggressions.com. Well, this one's going to be a 2-for-1. this episode. This episode is called Operation Choke Point, but there are two very different topics sharing the same name. And we will break it up into two parts. The first, we'll do, let's see, the first part, let's do the crypto targeting by the Biden administration. We'll do that first. That'll be the first Operation Choke Point because that was happening. There's Operation Choke Point and Operation Choke Point 2.0 because the first one was so popular. Everybody loves a sequel. And then the second half of this episode, what we'll do is we will talk about the battle for the maritime routes worldwide. And that is also Operation Choke Point to manage the ports, to manage the canals, the waterways around the world. And you've seen this start to get talked about with the Panama Canal situation going on in the United States. So we're going to do this. So it's two very different concepts. You know, they share a common name. It's going to be, it's going to be a problem for us. I guess that's a common denominator there. But really the underlying common denominator is control. As it always is, right? I've done a little bit of work on the subject. I know a thing or two about control structures and how they use them. So we'll talk about the way that the Biden administration weaponized the Department of Justice for a variety of things, but in particular going after the crypto industry and why that matters. Because even if you're not into crypto, you might think, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me. Well, it does. And I'll tell you what, it actually sort of, it really started in 2013 under Obama. That was the first go around. And of course, Joe Biden was his vice president. So it's not like he wasn't aware of this at all. But, listen, crypto scares the shit out of these old geezers in Washington, D.C. They don't have a fucking clue how to get out in front of it. And they're certainly too stupid to figure out how to profit from it. So they hate it. It's a threat to them. They don't understand it. They understand the current Federal Reserve fiat monetary scam that they've been inflating that bubble forever. Well, or for at least since 1913. And if you're a politician, you're pretty good at doing nothing, except spending money that you have to print into existence. And so they're very comfortable with the fiat scheme. So when you introduce crypto, and in crypto in general, in the broad sense, but also Bitcoin in particular, that has a capped number, a limit of 21 million coins that can ever be created, they're not going to understand that. Or let me rephrase that. They're not going to want to understand that. Because they live in a world of infinite fiat, where money is loaned into existence by the banks themselves. And they're very comfortable with that system. It's worked well for them. They know how to steal from it. They know how to game it. And when you bring a new paradigm in, like cryptocurrencies, it catches them off guard. Now, listen, a case can be made that we've been trending towards a cashless society for a while. We have paper checks, we have wire transfers, ACH, we have PayPal, we have credit cards, we have the ability to pick up the phone and call somebody and give them your credit card number over the phone and do all that. So that's cashless, but it doesn't feel dirty. It feels like convenience, and because it is, it's just a different way of paying for your items. But now, in a world where cryptocurrencies exist, and of thousands of them, okay, most of them are hot garbage, but there are a few that are actually uniquely qualified to be, to be taken seriously, Bitcoin being one of them. This represents something new to them. And the Biden administration was extremely aggressive in dealing with crypto companies, people that are doing people who work for crypto companies. You could just be some regular guy who works at a at a mining company or just some developer group that is working in the Bitcoin space or the Ethereum space or Solana or building these rails. You could be working for a company minding your own business, a good person on your way to doing amazing things, and they'll seize your bank account. And if you think that I'm being hyperbolic about that, I'm not. We have plenty of evidence of it. I've talked to people who have personally been on the wrong side of that. In fact, the guys who owned Activist Post before me got on the wrong side of PayPal. PayPal didn't just take away their business account, took their personal accounts too. So, and the personal accounts of their spouses, just for good measure. So this is important to all of us. Even if you're somebody who says, I'm not into crypto, it doesn't matter. You need to know this. You need to understand how this is working and what the plan is. Because if you do, then you'll be able to sort of step outside of it. You'll be able to make your moves in advance and not get whacked. But for people that are asleep at the wheel, good luck to you. Because the government does not want you to fiddle around with anything that undermines the strength. It's hard to use that word with Federal Reserve, but the impression, the perceived strength of the Federal Reserve. They just cannot have that. And what happened in 2013 was something called Operation Choke Point. This was the original one. This was under Obama's dirty Department of Justice when they were shaking down. This didn't have to do with crypto. This had to do with firearm dealers and payday lenders. They ran this from 2013 until 2017 when, surprise, surprise, Obama was out of office and the DOJ was no longer able to do this. The FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, settled many lawsuits against Obama's Gestapo. It was highly illegal what they were doing, but they don't care. I mean, you think Barack fucking Obama cares about legality as he's drone striking wedding parties and then hitting them a half an hour later once the first responders show up? You think he gives a shit about going in and rattling the cage of some payday lender? Of course not. And this is what they were doing, and they were doing it in the gun industry too. They were the ones that were going after arm braces and bump stocks and high-capacity magazines and anything that, listen, they want you disarmed, and they're going to incrementally take away your ability to defend yourself if they can. It starts with long guns and barrel size and bump stocks and magazines, and next thing you know, it'll be the guns themselves, and then you'll only be allowed to have a shotgun, then you'll only be allowed to have a pistol, then you'll only be allowed to have a slingshot, and then you'll have knives, and then it'll be like the streets of London where everybody's out there sword fighting like they're the fucking Pirates of the Caribbean on Downing Street. This is the direction it's going, and of course the Department of Injustice is behind it. So they didn't just go after payday lenders, and they didn't just go after gun shops. They went after everybody. Okay, I'm going to read off a list of the industries that they targeted, and you're going to go, oh my God, I didn't know anything about this. Ammo sales, to be expected. Not great. Shouldn't be happening, but not surprising, right? Ammo sales. Online gambling. Well, funny. If I can't turn on ESPN without seeing an ad for ESPN bets, right? Now there's online gambling everywhere. It's on your phones. But the Obama administration was certain that online gambling was going to be, one of the bigger problems that we faced. Telemarketing. Okay, I'm fine with that one. My bias is showing there. Oh, you're going to arrest all the telemarketers? Let me show you where they are. No, I'm kidding. Drug paraphernalia makers. Unless, of course, you're making customized crack pipes for Hunter Biden, then there's an exemption for that. You can totally get a waiver for that one, I'm sure. Pyramid type sales. Okay. You mean like timeshare presentations? Those people should definitely be incarcerated. But funny, the timeshares didn't show up on here. Ponzi schemes did. Oh, you mean like Social Security? Are you going to go arrest everybody at the Social Security office for that? The largest operating Ponzi scheme in the history of mankind? You should most definitely go do something about that. But they're not. They're not. They're worried about fireworks dealers, coin dealers, pawn shops. There's a fucking show on television, Pawn Stars. By the way, you know, I lived in Vegas for 10 years. I might have mentioned that a time or 10. The Pawn, you know what, you want to know a kind of interesting tidbit of behind the scenes on Pawn Stars? There is a shop that those guys own in, it's not even really downtown. It's sort of halfway, it's sort of near the stratosphere, sort of between the Strip and downtown. And it's the store for Pawn Stars. And it's so popular that they can't film there anymore because there's too many people showing up. So what they did is they built a secondary store. Like they built a stage that mimics the first store. So there's two stores. One of them is a real store. One of them is a sound studio that looks exactly like the store. And they film in there, just so you know. Little side note. Not that it matters. They're going to get shut down. I'm just kidding. ATM operators, they went after them. For some reason, they don't like ATM. I can understand if you're going after Bitcoin ATM operators. And eventually, they'll come after them. But just traditional ATM operators, Obama didn't like it. What they call a category they called racist materials. I'd like to see some of that. I'll be the judge of that, of what's really racist and what's not. Surveillance equipment. Oh yeah, it's fine when all the alphabet agencies have it, but they certainly don't want you to be prepared. They went after home-based charities. Let's be fair. If you're running a home-based charity, it's a scam. They went after credit repair services. I'm sure there are some fraudulent credit repair services, but the idea that you could improve your credit score and that just doesn't fly with the government is pretty sketchy to me. They went after debt consolidation firms, escort services. Now we've got OnlyFans and I don't know, Craigslist. I'm pretty sure you can still... I don't think they stomped out the escort service industry. I'm pretty sure you can get whores delivered to your, well, fuck, I know for a fact you can get them delivered to your room in 30 minutes or less in Vegas. All you have to do is see the mobile billboards driving around down the Strip with phone numbers on it. So I guess it's fine there. They went after tobacco sales. Oh, yeah. They went after get-rich products. I mean, what's a get-rich product? Getting a job in government? And they went after lottery sales. So they definitely don't want you muscling in on their grift, right? But that was the original Operation Choke Point. Then it went away after Obama went away, and then Trump came in, and then Biden came in, and then they launched Operation Choke Point 2.0. What was that? Well, this was Biden's attempt to kill crypto by debanking any company that was working in the industry, including the whole fintech industry. So they made it exceptionally difficult for companies to do business in the crypto space. This had to do with, they got a variety of agencies involved in this too. They got bank regulators. They got the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, involved. The FDIC should be watching themselves. They're the ones that invested all the money in bonds that are upside down. So they don't have many. They're not a very well-financed insurance corporation, by the way. The Federal Reserve Board was involved in it, and also the OCC, which is the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So these were the agencies that were tasked with destroying the crypto industry. And if you held crypto from 2021 to 2025, early part of 2025, you probably saw some fuckery. You probably saw that they were going after the digital asset ecosystem. And they were targeting them specifically. They went after Silicon Valley Bank. They went after Silvergate Bank. And one of the things that they did was, one of the ways that they got these banks to go bankrupt wasn't because Silicon Valley Bank was some renegade bank that was making loans to people that couldn't pay it back, or Silvergate Bank. They weren't out there like giving loans to people with bad credit or anything like that. They were running normal traditional banks, and they were bankrolling, allowing crypto companies to use them as their bank, which is a normal transaction, is a normal thing. If Bob's Lumber needs a bank somewhere, they could have gone to one of these banks. Now, these banks sort of specialized in, Silicon Valley Bank specialized in high tech and also crypto. And it was well known. It was well respected in the industry. It wasn't like they were running Ponzi schemes or anything there. They were just being a bank, which I don't love banks, but these banks weren't doing anything nefarious. What happened was that the Biden administration made the banks put digital assets on their balance sheets as assets or liabilities. It wasn't enough that you could just be working in the crypto space. You had to sign off on crypto as a whole. You had to put it on your balance sheet. You had to make it fall under the Basel III capital requirements. It's boring banking stuff, but it's a law that says you have to it's a liquidity situation. So you have to put these on. You have to have enough capital to operate. If you've got these on your balance sheets as assets and liabilities. Well, they didn't want to put them on their balance sheets as assets and liabilities because they're not their assets or their liabilities. They're their customers. They're the people that they're working with that are running these. If that business wants to go, put it on their balance sheet and go out of business because they have to market, then that's up to them. But the banks were required all of a sudden to do things differently. And they said, now with crypto, you've got to put it on your balance sheet, and you've got to mark to market is a term. And when you as an example, if this line of thinking was upheld right now, and they made all the other banks mark to market their bond holdings and their stock holdings and whatnot, they'd all be insolvent. They'd all be bankrupt. So when you require a bank to do this, you are putting them in a situation where they're going to go under. And this wasn't accidental. This was made to happen. They didn't change this and make these banks put their digital assets on their balance sheets because they wanted to help them. They did it because they intentionally wanted to bankrupt them. And that's what happened. That's why the people that got the word, the people that had their holdings with Silicon Valley Bank like 2 days earlier, and they heard it's going to get marked to market and it's going to fuck everything up, those people were transferring their money out immediately. And you'll find that there's a list of people who had advanced knowledge of that, and they did not get hammered. They did not lose their money in the bankruptcy, but everyone else did. And that's the Biden administration for you. What they did, so the tactics, this goes to the tactics. Let's talk about the tactics of Operation Choke Point 2.0, because it reminds me of what Jeremy Kauffman told me once. Jeremy Kauffman, the founder, CEO of Library, Odyssey. You may know as Odyssey. You can find macroaggressions on Odyssey. He said that to me, his big complaint with them was they battled the Justice Department for years, and he would say to them, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And they couldn't tell him what they wanted him to do. They wouldn't tell him what they wanted him to do. And they wouldn't tell him where he was deficient, and they couldn't tell him what he needed to do to get into compliance. And the reason why this was happening was because the rules that were being sent out by the Biden administration was that they wanted vague interpretive regulation letters. They intentionally wanted the letters that they sent out to these cryptocurrency companies to be vague, intentionally vague, so that you could read it and still not know what exactly you're doing wrong. And certainly not know how to bring yourself into compliance with them, because they didn't want you in compliance. They wanted you out of business. You have to work with a different premise, not like, oh, this is a regulatory agency and they're trying to make sure that everything is above board and that you're complying with the regulatory. Jeremy Kauffman was like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just tell me what you want me to do. They wouldn't tell him. They couldn't tell him what they wanted him to do to fix the problem. They only told him there's a problem. And he says, okay, how would you like me to solve this problem? The answer was, we can't tell you. So you don't want us to fix the problem. You just want there to be a problem. And that's exactly what happened. Threatening banks with, they did this to the banks. They threatened the banks with negative examination scores. Not just Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate Bank. I'm talking every bank. Every bank operating in the United States was told that they would get negative examination scores and fines if they continued their partnerships with digital asset companies. So you could just be a run-of-the-mill bank having a banking relationship with a local company that's in, let's say they're in the Bitcoin mining space. Let's say they run a bunch of miners and they need a bank account and they're not doing anything wrong and they've got 20 employees and they burn a lot of energy and they've got a business model and they've been working for a while and they're doing business with this bank. That bank would have to reach out to them and say, hey, we have to terminate our relationship with you. And they're like, why would we do? It's like, we don't know. I mean, you didn't do anything wrong necessarily, but we're getting letters from the Department of Justice. We're getting letters from bank regulators, from the FDIC, from the Federal Reserve Board, from the OCC. They're telling us that they're going to examine us, the banks, and negatively examine us. They're going to go in and not give us a good score. They're intentionally going to give us a negative score. And they're going to fine us if we continue to do business with you. So we're sorry, man, but we have to let you go. And this was happening all over the country. This is the debanking part. You've heard that about, hey, people in the crypto space are getting debanked. And it's like shuffling to find a bank. Which bank will take? They're all getting the same message. There's nowhere to go. They said that there would be, quote, reputational risk if banks didn't comply. We're going to destroy your reputation if you don't get rid of these dirty crypto companies. You know what they're doing? They're in the crypto business. Do you know what that is? It's like murder, right? You can just see, I can just envision this scenario. It's like, really? Is that what you think they are? Personal accounts were closed without warning and without explanation. They just straight closed your bank account. Because remember, it's not your bank account. It's their bank account. It's the bank's bank account. You're an unsecured creditor in third position behind the shareholders and the bondholders. So if the FDIC wants to come in or the Federal Reserve wants to come in and say, you can't be servicing these clients in the crypto industry, and you go, what are you talking about? I'll do what I want to do. Well, guess what they'll do to you? They'll throw you out of the SWIFT banking system. They'll throw you out of the ACH, the check clearing. Good luck running a bank when you don't have that. They said they would do it, and they did it to banks that got on the wrong side of them. This isn't regulatory agencies operating with the best interest of the people. This is regulatory agencies hunting down any competition for the Federal Reserve. And a reminder, regulatory overreach like this is illegal. It is not legal to do this. The things that they were doing, the things that the FDIC and the Reserve Board and the OCC were doing are illegal. They were being instructed to do it by the Biden administration, but it's not legal for them to do this. What they told the banks, the terminology that they used, quote, safety and soundness concerns. That's what they said. They said they'd cut them off from ACH if they failed to comply. Well, if they cut you off from that, you're no longer a bank. You're in real trouble. And then, as I said, they made the banks put the digital assets on their balance sheets as assets and liabilities, and that was it. Mark to market, you're done. You're now officially, from a accounting standpoint, you are insolvent as a bank, and we'll close you down. We'll start the process of liquidating you. And that's what happened. And it happened fast. And I remember when it was happening. Well, Trump says he's ending this, but he's also a confirmed liar. So I don't know how much I'm going to trust him. Now, he's got Scott Bessent in there who likes crypto. He's got Howard Lutnick, Epstein's next door neighbor, who likes crypto as well. So, and he's got Cynthia Lummis in there who's pushing for crypto regulations and to regulate it in a more positive way. So I think that things are changing. I think that. But then again, it is Donald Trump, and he is a pathological liar. He will lie about anything and everything. So you can never trust that guy. And when he says that things are changing, I'd like to believe him. But given his track record, I just simply am unwilling and unable to do that. But we'll see how things go. Let's move on. Since we talked about Operation Choke Point, let's talk about the maritime choke points. Again, it's all back to control. They're trying to control crypto. Here they're trying to control trade throughout the world and ultimately the world's economy. If you control the shipping routes, sea lanes, and then you have a foothold into to running the world. We watched the British and the Dutch do that with their shipping fleets hundreds of years ago. And maritime choke points have been extremely important for the history of the world. Sometimes it's just as simple as geography, man. It's just that. That's just what it is. We're going to talk about three main regions. The Western Hemisphere is one. The Middle East, and we'll wrap up with Southeast Asia. There's problems with these right now, and the bigger problem is that it's not limited to the geography of where it takes place. If you remember the boat that got sideways in the Suez Canal, that closed it down for 6 days. And people were like, "What are we doing?" Like, they just send ships in a totally different direction. Everything took 3 times as long. And that was just a temporary thing. So these problems, regardless of where they happen, the reverberations are worldwide. So it pays to to have your head up and looking at what's going on. And so let's talk a little bit about the Western Hemisphere, because we when Trump got in the second time around, he ran on a platform with a bunch of things that he said he was going to do. He got in office, and immediately his primary focus was the dumbest shit you've ever heard of. Like, we're going to take Greenland, and we're going to get that Panama Canal back. And you're like, okay, you didn't mention this at all during your campaign. Is it that you just found out about these things? Is it that you didn't want to say anything because you would sound crazy, which you would have? Or is it bait and switch? Is it all the above? What is it? Well, Trump's pivot to both of these countries has its roots in the technocracy movement of the early 1930s. This is not anything new. It's a weird flex, to want to go after Greenland and just shit talk Denmark and be like, we're going to take it. We're either going to buy it from you or we're just going to physically take it from you. And everyone's like, God damn, like, what did Greenland do to Donald Trump? Like, what, and he actually mentioned something about it during his last term, because I remember seeing the meme that was like a picture of like a city in Greenland where there's like nothing there. And then and then the Trump Tower, Vegas, right there. And then Trump retweeted and he says, I promise I won't do this to Greenland. Ha ha ha. Well, what are you doing? What is the point here? I'll tell you what the point is. It's not some random, he's not just shit talking these people for no reason. There's something behind it. And he's not going to talk about this, but we will, because we know about it. Something called the North American Technate. Have you heard of it? It's a design and plan to transform North America into a technocratic society. This is not my idea. It's not even Trump's idea. This is something that has been around for almost 100 years. And Elon Musk's grandfather was one of the heads of the technocracy movement. And wasn't Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump, the guy that took all of Nikola Tesla's gear when he died? Oh, interesting. So we've got Elon's grandpa involved in technocracy 100 years ago, and we've got Donald Trump's uncle involved in technology theft a little over like 100 years ago as well. So what's going on? And then they rejoin Donald Trump, Elon Musk in the Oval Office as the first buddy. I think they called him the first buddy. Oh, isn't that cute? I'm not a fan. Not a fan of Elon Musk, for the record. But this is... So what this North American technate is, and you can find this in Bill Cooper's book, Behold a Pale Horse. They talk about this a little bit in there. It's the grouping up of these. It's like the North American Union, except it's a little bigger. And it's comprised of all of North America, Central America, the Caribbean, and specifically Greenland. Okay, 30 countries in total. About 600 million people fall in that range. And the goal is two things: resources and choke points. And in the technocratic society, one of the things that they were talking about was they were talking about moving away from money and moving into an energy accounting system. So it's a little different than the fiat currency scam. It'll be a scam, don't get me wrong, but it'll be a different version of scams. One that's based around energy as the valuable resource. And I think Bitcoin kind of falls into this a little bit, because Bitcoin is a digital representation of energy as well, because of the energy required to mine the coins. So there's a component. I'm not trying to say that Bitcoin is part of the technocratic movement, but it is a representation of energy in some form. And that is the concept that they were very much interested in. But in order to, what they said in this technocratic playbook was that you've got to have enough space, enough land, so that you've got all the resources that you need. So it can't just be limited to it can't just be the United States, because the United States doesn't have the same things that grow in Central America. And they don't have the same things that grow. They don't have the same sorts of minerals that are in Greenland, right? And so you've got to get a little of everything. It's like a basket. You've got to get things as far north as the Arctic Circle and as far south as the equator, as far west as the international date line, and as far east as the edges of Greenland. So it's quite it's the Western Hemisphere, right? It doesn't extend into South America, but it's big enough. And one of the things that it includes is the Panama Canal. And so when you start to hear Trump talking, going on and on about the Panama Canal, well, you need to know a little bit about how the Panama Canal started. First, it wasn't originally the Americans weren't involved. I think the French were involved, and that's sort of like they couldn't do it. They couldn't manage it. I think too many of their people were dying while they were building it. And so they gave up, and the United States came in. The United States came in 1904 and started working on it. They finished it about 10 years later, 1914, and they ran it for many, many years until 1979, when they the United States under Jimmy Carter handed the Panama Canal back to Panama under General Omar Torrijos, which is a guy who makes an appearance in John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, a guy who would later blow up in an airplane by the CIA. But he was the one that crafted that deal that got the Panama Canal back for the Panamanians. And they've been running it ever since 79. To put this in perspective as to why it's so important to have the Panama Canal, if you're taking cargo from Los Angeles to New York and you go down the Pacific Ocean and then you cut across through the Panama Canal and then through the Caribbean and up the eastern seaboard, that trip will take you 5,200 miles. Okay. That's with the Panama Canal. If you don't have the Panama Canal and you are forced to go south all the way down around the southern cone of South America through Tierra del Fuego and all that rough water there, and then back up through Brazil, through the Caribbean, and up to New York, instead of it being 5,200 miles, it now becomes 13,000 miles. So you are talking about a very sizable difference in shipping by doing that. The canal was basically, the sales pitch for it was that, because it's always got to be about the military, right? The sales pitch was that it's going to be great for war because we can get our ships there faster. You know, we cut through the canal and then we shave weeks off of the trip, thousands of miles, and we can, we can just make ourselves a little bit more accessible. Our Eastern force and our Pacific fleet can join up much easier that way, which is true. And also it's a great place for, just for trade, for any sort of maritime shipping that needs to go through there. The idea that you can shave off having to go around South America is a bonus for anybody, right? You don't have to be in the military to benefit from that. So it did improve shipping lanes considerably. And what's interesting about that was that when they built this Panama Canal, the region where the canal is located became kind of like a legally ambiguous area, sort of like Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. It's neither subject to American laws or Panamanian laws. It's kind of its own thing. So that's why they housed the School of the Americas there. That's the it's the dictator training school, teaching these dictators how to become terrorists, how to terrorize their own people, how to use propaganda, teaching them the finer points of throwing people out of helicopters or waterboarding them or whatever, right? So that all went along there, which is, you can't really do too much of that at Fort Benning. You have to sort of outsource some of that to other places where you can really get the hands on. You can't practice waterboarding too much on our American military bases due to the laws and whatnot that we have. But you can do that at School of the Americas in Panama. You can do whatever you want there because, it's like Guantanamo Bay. You go there and you have no rights. So very convenient for the American empire for a variety of reasons, right? To have control of this. So what happened was that in 97, a Hong Kong-based company called Hutchinson Ports Holdings signed a 25-year lease to manage the ports of Balboa, which is the Pacific side of the Panama Canal, and the port of Cristobal, which is on the Atlantic side. And so for 25 years, this company, it's a Hong Kong-based company called Hutchinson Port Holdings. They've run this and made money off of it and have had no real problems. But Trump gets back into office and he says the Chinese are controlling the Panama Canal. He's technically correct because this company is Chinese. So what do? They bring BlackRock in to buy them. There is a proposed sale of CK Hutchinson for $22 billion to BlackRock, which includes ports worldwide, not just the Panama Canal, but ports all around the world. Nothing to see here. Go back to sleep, everybody. Your government is in charge. Nothing to see here. Just BlackRock buying up the Panama Canal. Moving on, let's talk about the Middle East. There's multiple hotspots. It's a very dangerous place. We talked about in our 1973 episode, talked about the Yom Kippur War, which was scheduled earlier that year at Bilderberg. It was put on the calendar. They knew it was going to happen. And it spiked oil prices. Oil went from $3 a barrel to $12 a barrel in just a matter of months. So, and that was because of the closing of the Suez Canal. Now, the Suez Canal is in Egypt. The Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean Sea to the north with the narrow Red Sea that runs vertically down the south with Saudi Arabia to the east and Africa to the west. Okay. This is the canal where the boat got stuck sideways. Right. So let me just throw out a scenario for you. Let's say we get a World War III situation in the Middle East with Iran. Okay. And it's Israel versus Iran, which means it's Israel and America versus Iran. And Egypt says, we're just going to shut down the Suez Canal. We're just going to close it down because we don't want any of your warships going through. We don't want any, we're just shutting it down. It's too dangerous. Well, if we follow the pattern from 1973, and oil prices do what they did back then, today's impact would be from $62 a barrel, which is where it stands right now, to $250 a barrel. And I'm here to remind you that in 73, when it happened in a matter of weeks. It wasn't like it took 10 years for it to quadruple. Just days. Think about what the global impact would be if oil went to $250 a barrel. I could think of a lot of oil companies that would benefit tremendously from that. You would watch Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Qatar and Kuwait. You would watch, their wealth would be astronomical just in a matter of months from that. So it matters. My point is that you may think, well, I don't give a shit about the Suez Canal. I couldn't even find it on a map. Well, that may be true, but you will be impacted by it. We all will, because if oil gets that high that quickly, a lot of things shut down. There's only so much you can produce domestically. And the United States has a shit ton of oil, by the way. So it would behoove us to open up the Anwar province in Alaska to get those Anwar fields going up again. It would be great for us to fire up the offshore oil rig leases in the Gulf of America that Biden shut down. Biden shut them all down. He's the most destructive president in my lifetime. I think by design. I know he was an incompetent fool, but this was being done on purpose. I think to really create the pretext to get Trump back in there so that he could really come in with the hammer and screw us all over. But it's undeniable that what the Biden administration did as far as energy security was like slitting our own throat, draining the strategic petroleum reserve, turning off all the pipeline, killing the pipeline deals, shutting down the Alaska province, shutting down the Gulf of Mexico, formerly Gulf of Mexico, leases that they had. I remember the paperwork for that was like, you could have up to no more than 10 oil rigs going in the Gulf of Mexico at any one time. And then you read the fine print and it's like, and it could also be zero. And it was zero. So that's something to consider. So the Suez Canal is massively important. If you follow the Suez down, and so you're going through the Mediterranean, you go through the Suez, you wind up in the Red Sea, and now you're heading south. You're going south down there. You've got Saudi Arabia to your east. You've got Africa to the west, and you're slowly going down. As you get about 80% of the way down the Saudi Arabian peninsula, it then turns into a different country. Saudi Arabia doesn't extend all the way to the end of the peninsula. There's another country that takes up the bottom fifth, and that country is called Yemen. And we've done an entire episode about this before. So if you want like the details, you can find that from about 2 years ago where we got really into the weeds as far as what's going on there. But just as a refresher, and we don't need to dwell on this too much, but there's a region called the Bab el Mandeb. Okay. This is where the Red Sea kind of bottoms out. It goes as far south as it can, and then it hits the Horn of Africa. And the translation of Bab el Mandeb is Gate of Grief. Okay. Once you get to the Gate of Grief, then you've got Yemen to the east of you. No longer Saudi Arabia. You may have relations with Saudi Arabia, but you don't have relations with Yemen, right? And and then to the west, you've got Eritrea and Djibouti. Those are both countries that have U.S. military. Well, Djibouti has U.S. military bases in there. Eritrea, I'm not sure if it does. But those are to the west. And as you get down into this strait, it becomes extremely narrow. It's only about 16 miles wide at the narrowest point. So you want to talk about the ultimate choke point. This is it. This is why when you keep hearing like the Houthi rebels of Yemen are launching missiles and knocking out all these boats, this is where they're getting them, because they go all the way down the Red Sea. They go right past Saudi Arabia the majority of the time, and then they get down to that very bottom. They got to get down there, and then they've got to it's sort of dead ends, and they've got to go east as soon as they can. Well, when they go through that narrow strait that's only 16 miles wide, if you're flying an Israeli flag or an American flag, good luck to you, because you're going to get missiles launched. Or if you're not even flying the flag, if you're just owned, your ownership of the boat is an Israeli firm, you're going to be at the bottom of the sea. And that's what the Houthi rebels, which aren't really rebels, it's basically their government. It's only rebels when the United States is talking about them. You know, we're so awful, I swear. But this is the region where it's happening. And then that bottoms out into the into a region where you've got United States bases on one side and you've got Yemeni bases on the other side, and it's very dangerous and in a place that you need to keep your eyes on. But none of this is as important as the Strait of Hormuz. And the Strait of Hormuz is going to get a lot of discussion in the near future here. This is the kink where this episode might be helpful to have a map, but the Persian Gulf, if you're exiting the Persian Gulf, there's one way out. You got to go kind of to the southeast. And as you go to the southeast, there's a unique kind of curve. It's like a kink in it. It doesn't run straight out. You've got to kind of go up before you go down, right? And when you get to that kink, you've got, first of all, Iran is the eastern side of the Persian Gulf the entire way. And when you get to that kink in the Strait of Hormuz, it's Iran there as well, right? You've got to deal with them. And this kink is very narrow. It's from anywhere from 30 to 60 miles wide. So not quite as narrow as the Bab el-Mandeb, but it's still, from a maritime standpoint, you might think 60 miles is pretty wide, but it's not for shipping. But it's extremely important because you've got the Persian Gulf and you've got the Gulf of Oman, and then this very narrow channel. So what is the most important component of this is oil, of course, as you might expect. 20% of the world's oil has to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. 35% of the world's natural gas. 33% of all seaborne trade. So this is a huge, but this is not a canal, to be clear. This isn't like the Panama Canal and not like the Suez Canal. Those are man-made cuts in the topography in order to allow a lock system to be put in there and to manage the canal process. That's not what this is. This is natural. This is just the way that the water flows, and it doesn't really bother anybody unless you get on the wrong side of somebody who controls the Strait of Hormuz. Now, on the one side, you've got the United Arab Emirates and Oman. They're not bothering anybody. UAE is Abu Dhabi and Dubai, places like that, right? They've got a lot of oil. Geographically, they're small. They have relationships and probably have a military of some sort, but not like Iran's military, and certainly not like the United States. So they're not going to close anything down. And if they did, they're small enough that they can be made to come under the control of somebody else. So it's not like the UAE and Oman are going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran could. Now, I am not of the belief that Iran is the big boogeyman out there. Israel thinks that, and the United States empire thinks that, because they view everybody as a nail that needs to be hammered. And Iran has been a nail for a long, long time. But if World War III breaks out in the Middle East, which in my opinion is the most likely place for it, because you have a bloodthirsty, deranged Zionist regime in Israel that wants to start a war with Iran and then have the Americans fight it for them. If that were to happen, my assumption is that immediately Iran would tell all the remaining members of OPEC, anybody in that Persian Gulf area, hey, listen, we're shutting down the strait. Don't send your boats through there. We're gonna give you a warning and tell you it's not happening. Then we're gonna send a bunch of boats out there and drop mines. We're gonna mine the shit out of the entire place. So if you do send a boat through there, it's gonna blow up. Okay, but Iran has good relations with a lot of these countries there. And my guess is that they would work something out and maybe even allow some of them to pass through, but maybe not all of them. But it would be a catastrophe for the oil prices. Now, as I mentioned in the previous Suez Canal example, in 73 from $3 to $12. Current day money, it would be $62 to $2.50 for a barrel of oil. They shut the Strait of Hormuz down, your guess is as good as mine what oil will be. When you take 20% out of the supply chain immediately, that's not just we're going to jack the price up by 20%. This is going to be many multiples. And again, a reminder of who occupies the Persian Gulf. Just so that we're clear, because I know this isn't meant to be a geography, a pop quiz or anything like that. But here are the countries in the Persian Gulf: Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates. These are the oil-producing countries. This is a lot of energy coming from that one region there, okay? Not to mention just general trade. And if you wanted to create a huge problem in the world, you could focus on these choke points, these maritime choke points. You don't have to hit a ton of them, right? You create problems in the Panama Canal, Suez Canal, and the Strait of Hormuz, and the world is going to look a lot different. I said we'd wrap up with Southeast Asia. Let's do that. Let's talk about two places. Well, first of all, we've got the Belt and Road Initiative that the Chinese have put into place. It's been running now for 10 years. It's got another 30 years left for it to be built out. And part of it is has to do with land bridges, rail systems, roads, things like that. There's two parts of it. One is the land. The second part is the sea. And they've described it as the string of pearls, right? They're just a connection of dots that are going throughout Southeast Asia, South Asia, and up the coast towards mainland China. And they control these ports, either overtly control them or control them through partnership deals. The Gwadar port in Karachi, Pakistan, is a Pakistani port that's run by the Chinese. It's completely under Chinese control, which means that they know what's going in and out of there. 60% of all freight in Pakistan comes through that port. So the Chinese are deeply involved in that. That's a very important location in the world. But if you go from Karachi eastward towards Southeast Asia, you wind up in a place called the Strait of Malacca. And this is the Southeast Asian pressure point, the choke point here, right? Because this it connects the Indian Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. And it does so through a very narrow region where you've got Indonesia to the south and you've got Malaysia and Thailand to the north. And any sort of disruption in this maritime choke point, and you get big problems because China is involved in it financially with Belt and Road. Their ships have been going through there for a very long time. If you think of like the Dutch East India Company, that's this region here. This was where the Dutch were heavily involved in Indonesia, and in this region here has been extremely important for a variety of countries in Southeast Asia and beyond too. So you've got the makings for something catastrophic were it to spread there. So you've really got about 4 different major choke points through the water that you would have to keep an eye on. And obviously there's others, but Panama Canal, Suez Canal, Strait of Hurmuz, Strait of Malacca. Keep an eye on those for the next few years. They're going to become a focal point. There's going to be the potential for problems there because it has a way of getting everybody's attention. And of course, with regard to the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to have Iran, if they are in fact in the middle of a war, they'll keep that closed for a long, long time. And if they do that, then say goodbye to your way of life, because things will change considerably. Supply chain disruptions will be felt globally, undeniable. Have storable food, have your money out of the banks, get yourself some firearms, silver coins, early rather than late. The decision is up to you. Hey, if you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. Go to macroaggressions.io, bookmark activistpost.com, naturalblaze.com. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you again soon.